started. Today I'm talking about planting succulent combos. So succulents, of course, are one of the easiest plants to grow. If you haven't ever grown a succulent, you should definitely try. It's very, very easy. It's very, very successful. So no matter what color your thumb is, if you're a green thumb or you think you got a black thumb, or you're looking for something very easy to do, or just something that's really attractive and also is kind of a talking piece. These are great things to do with these succulents, and I've got a huge collection here. We're going to do indoors and outdoors, so I'm going to talk about both. Because you can grow succulents in your indoor spaces as well as your outdoor spaces. We've got ones that we sell in our perennial department that come back year after year, or even our evergreen. And then we've got, of course, our indoor succulents. And now the indoor succulents aren't going to make it through our winter season, so it's important to kind of know the differences, but also to ask us questions when you come in and say, I want to do an indoor succulent combination, because then we'll get you in the right area to pick out the right types of plants. And then, of course, if you're going to do an outdoor succulent combo, we've got those as well. So we're going to be doing both of those and showing you both of those throughout this. Jacqueline, hi, how you doing? All right, so they come in such a huge variety of colors, shapes, and sizes. So you can really get a huge selection, whether you want taller ones, lower ones, compact ones. There's so many different types of succulents. And even you can throw in some cacti and some cactus into this mix. So I'll show you this one right here that I grabbed. So we got this little cactus. So, any of those kind of desert plants. Now, succulents, over the many, many years, the eons of years, have developed the ability, cactus and succulents, the ability to absorb moisture and hold on to it and use it when they need it. So that's why you see these plants growing in desert and arid, dry conditions, because they've built this system of being able to absorb that moisture and keep it and retain it so that they can use it later when it's a very dry time. So they don't require a lot of water. In fact, probably the biggest issue that anybody ever has with their succulents, especially on the indoor space, and I'll get to that, is overwatering. We tend to water a lot in this area because we're used to it. But succulents really don't require a lot of water at all. So if you have an area in your home, around your home, inside or outside, you can grow succulents if you don't have the ability to water as much. In fact, most outdoor succulents don't require much of any water because you're going to get rain. Now, indoor succulents are going to require a little bit more. So Valerie said all of mine died because where I bought them. Well, I hope, I'm assuming that's not here. So Valerie, if you live in our neck of the woods, come and check us out. And of course, hopefully you'll learn something here that will help you be successful in your future succulent growing. So there's a lot of varieties, tons and tons of varieties. I'm just going to hold this up and show you. These are some of our indoor succulents. This is just a little tray. So you can just see all the different colors there and all the different textures and different looks, and all of these get different sizes and shapes. And so some of them will bloom, some of them won't bloom. They're just so cool, and there's so many different looks. So I'll show some of those here in a minute and get you a little bit of an up-close look on some of those. But you've got a huge selection, and of course the outdoor succulents. I mean, I'll just hold up this one right here, this Hens and Chicks. So Hens and Chicks, look at that guy. I mean, so many different colors. There's lots of little red tips in there and just bunches and bunches and bunches of them. So you've got a huge collection, this huge assortment of different looks, which is why they're so fun to put in combinations. They're also, of course, drought tolerant. So let's talk about some of the key things that you need to know about indoor or outdoor succulents. So let's first start with, what do all plants need? They need sun. Succulents need a good amount of sun. Now, outdoor, you can actually get away with a little bit of shade. That's okay. You don't need all day full blazing sun to grow outdoor succulents. But you still need at least a good 6 to 7 hours of light. You don't want to get much less than 6. You might be able to get away with 5 hours. And there are some succulents that will grow in a little bit more shade. But typically what's going to happen with succulents is they're going to stretch for their sunlight. So if they're not getting enough, they're going to look for it. And when they go to look for it, they stretch out. So the plant actually grows trying to find the sun, and that's what we call stretching out for the sunlight. So it's important to get them in as much light as possible. Now, indoor succulents, let's look at like an aloe plant. Or any of the other succulents, these great looking succulents. You're going to want to get them as much possible light as you possibly can inside. So that means usually a south facing window. So we want to put them in an area where it's going to get pretty much all day sunlight indoors. That's probably one of the biggest issues with growing succulents inside. Not to say that you can't be successful in a little bit less light, but typically, again, the plant is going to look for the light. It's going to stretch out and try and find it. And most people want to keep their succulents nice and compact. They want to keep them kind of, the same shape they are right now. Now, that is not 100% naturally how they grow. So let's look at this guy right here. So this is an Echeveria, and that one is super, super compact, very, very low to the ground, looks great. Now, naturally, this is going to continue to grow up. Everything grows from a terminal bud. It's going to continue to grow and reach out. Now, if it's in a lot of sun, it's going to stay more compact for a longer period. But if we have it in a little less sun, it's going to reach for it. And when it reaches for the light to try and find it, that's where you get that kind of longer, leggy look. But that is somewhat how they naturally grow. So realize that. And I'll show you a couple options that you can do to kind of correct that in the future. But really the best thing that you can do is provide them with enough light. So what's another option? Of course, giving them a grow light. We've got a nice collection of indoor grow lights. This is a great one. So this one is our desktop plant light. So this one is great. So if you're in an office or a setting where you just don't get enough light, but you have to have succulents, you really want to grow a succulent, this is a great option because you can get that light right over the plant. It gives you a nice little platform as well. Comes with the grow light, it's plug in. It's a nice little desktop lamp, but it's also a great grow light. So great option for your indoor spaces. Also, we've got a couple other options here. If you're growing a fair amount of succulents and you're doing like a shelf or something, this is a great one. So this is our strip light. This is just a normal kind of strip light, but this is made by Sunblaster and it's designed specifically for growing plants. It's a really, really nice light. It's got a reflector on it, and you can mount this to the underside of a shelf. They come in 2-foot, 3-foot, and 4-foot sections. So these little lights are great. Shop lights could work as well. You need to make sure your light is actually designed to grow plants. And you can check, we did a webinar specifically on grow lights. So if you go back to our website and you click on the Garden Guru tab, then you can find all my past webinars. And they also have notes. So that we did a whole one on grow lights talking about these specific lights. And so if you're not in our neck of the woods and you can't come see us and you want to get a grow light to grow something, then you can check out that webinar and you can get a lot of good information on all the different types of kelvins and reflectors and different types of colors of light and all that information. So you can check that out as well. But we also have just, bulbs. So if you've got a lamp nearby and you're trying to add a little bit of extra light, this is a great option. You can just put a bulb in, a grow light bulb, or I love this clamp grow light. This is a great option too. So this just clamps onto a shelf or a bookcase or anything nearby, and this allows you to direct the light right on there. It comes with a nice reflector on the inside, comes with your grow light as well. So another great option. You can bring this closer, you can take it further away. So great options to grow succulents if you don't have enough sunlight. If you think you need more sunlight, then you probably do, and that's a great option. Or you can just find a different space around your home that might have a little bit more. Is a snake plant a succulent, is what Jacqueline asked. So a snake plant is not a succulent, but it is a very, very easy plant to grow. So we talk about that a lot when we talk about easy plants to grow. It grows in very, very it can grow in low light to medium, almost to high light situations. You don't want to put it right directly in a sunny window, but they don't require a lot of water, so that's an easy plant. And you can mix snake plants in with your succulents too. Now succulents are going to absorb that moisture and hold it in the plant itself. So you're actually going to, the watering requirements on succulents is probably going to be even a little bit less than a snake plant. But great question, and there's lots and lots of different types of plants. This is a Euphorbia. So this is another type of, is not a succulent, but a Euphorbia can grow in a very, very dry condition as well. So we've got lots and lots of options like that. So we can mix some things, cactus, succulents. You can even do some of your air plants. Some of your tillandsias work well in succulent combinations. So you got lots and lots of choices to mix different types of plants, which is a great thing. Valerie said, I ordered them online. Will not do that again. Yeah, if you don't live in our neck of the woods, Valerie, if you do, come and see us. We've got a great collection of outdoor or indoor succulents, and you get to see them and you get to pick them out, and you don't have to worry about them being packed up in a box. Now, if you don't, then check out your local garden centers. I always tout the local garden centers over some of the big box stores. They're going to have the knowledge. they're going to have the expertise to really get you what you need. So check them out if you don't live in our area, in the Hampton Roads area. All right, so we've talked about sun. Sun is super, super important. Let's talk about soil. This is where the plants are going to grow. So if we're doing indoor containers, indoor succulent containers, we want to use a specific succulent mix. So we've got a couple options here. We've got our Espoma organic cactus mix. So this is a great option. Let's put this down, and then we've got our black gold cactus and succulent mix as well. So these are going to be heavier. When you pick these up, you're going to feel the weight of the soil, and that's because there's pumice in here, and there's sand, and there's different kind of amendments in here that are going to make it dry out. So just because you feel it and it feels heavy and it feels like it might be waterlogged, it's not. It's just a heavier mix. And heavier mixes usually have bigger granulars, bigger chunks, and that means the water can go through a little bit better. And it's not going to have as much water holding capacity. And that's important. We don't want a lot of moisture sitting around our succulents. And why it's so important to use these when you're planting indoors is because we don't have a lot of sun. We don't have a lot of evaporation naturally. We don't have wind. You're not going to have those outdoor factors that are going to dry out soil better. And that's why you want to make sure you use a very dry mix. Shirley said, what's considered as a succulent? Well, there's lots of succulents. And then there's, of course, different types. Hens and Chicks, are a different type of plant. The Echeveria, the Horothia, and then, of course, Cactus and Euphorbia. So there's lots and lots of different things. We kind of group them all together as a plant that grows in a dry condition with lots of sun. But succulents are specific to specific types of plants. So succulents are a little bit of a broader category. So soil, back to the soil, the cactus mix is important on the indoor spaces. On your outdoor spaces, we're going to recommend our McDonald potting soil. This is our all-purpose. And we also carry a green bag that is a natural and organic potting soil. The natural and organic potting soils are great soils, but they contain an aloe wetting agent. I mean, literally, they use aloe to allow it to absorb moisture so it doesn't become a hard, cake. This is going to use a synthetic wetting agent, but that means that it can dry out a little bit better. So when I'm doing my outdoor containers for succulents specifically, then I'm going to use our all-purpose potting soil. Now you can use the cactus mix. That's going to be completely fine. That's very easy to use, and that's a great option. But if you need a little bit of a bigger bag and you need a little bit more soil, then the all-purpose is one that will dry out efficiently outside. I do recommend this for my indoor plants, like snake plants, or any of the other plants, the Dieffenbachias, the pothos, the palms, any of those things, because the natural and organic does not dry out as fast. So using a potting soil is the most important thing. Make sure it says potting soil. You don't want to use a garden soil. You don't want to use compost or any of those things. Now, of course, you can make your own soil too. You can make lots and lots of different types of soil. We've got pumice, which is a great addition to add. We've got charcoal, we've got sand, we've got peat moss, we've got cocoa coir, we've got lots and lots of different things. So if you want to make your own soil, you can obviously do that as well. Or sometimes if you've got soil and you just need to add something to it to make it a little bit more dry, a little bit more arid, better drainage, then you can add perlite, and we carry that as well. So lots and lots of different options out there for soil, but soil is important. We want to make sure that it's going to drain well, which leads me to my next thing, is choosing your pot. So whenever you pick out a pot, make sure it's got a drain hole. Drain holes are going to make your life a lot easier when dealing with succulents. Now indoors, that typically makes it a little bit trickier, doesn't it? Because indoors, you got to put something under it to catch that water if you're watering, or if you're putting this on a coffee table or something. And you can get those just plastic saucers that go around it. That's perfectly fine. I will usually take my succulent containers and put them in the sink, water them really well, and then let them dry out for a while and then put them back on. You don't want to let it sit in a puddle of water, so we don't want to keep that saucer full of water. Now some containers will have built-in saucers. So you can see the drainage hole, and it's actually got one on the side too over here, but then it's got a saucer built into it, and that's a great option as well. So for your indoor succulents, you might consider this. But drainage is obviously very important to your succulent and your success of your succulent. So making sure that it has a drain hole is a good thing. Now, if it doesn't have a drain hole, I've got a couple different options here. So here's one, doesn't have a drain hole, right? But this, you can just drop in a succulent. So you find the succulent that fits, that's the right size, and you can just drop it in. And then what you're going to do is you're going to grow it in this plastic container and then eventually we'll have to upgrade it. So eventually, and not very quickly, so you can probably grow it in this plastic container for probably a year or two, and then eventually the root system is going to get big enough that you're going to want to upgrade it. When we upgrade containers inside, we want to gradually upgrade. We don't want to go from small to large. We think sometimes outdoors you can get away with it a little bit more, where you can go from a small container to a big container, because again, you're going to dry out. But if you're doing it in an indoor space, if you put this in a big pot and just fill it with soil, that soil is going to stay moist for too long of a period, and it's not going to dry out as effectively. So if you're just upgrading, then you just want to upgrade by 1 inch or 2. And with succulents, I would try and keep it around 1 inch. So we've got a 4-inch container here, and then we've got a 5-inch pot. We can slip that right in, and you've got a great look. So very, very easy to do to slip it in. Now, you can plant in containers without holes. That's a very, very easy thing to do, and I might use a container that has that, but if not, I'll show you the steps on how you can do that if you ever run into that. For example, you might have a container like this that you absolutely love, and you want to plant right in there. You don't want to plant in a plastic pot. However, you can plant in a plastic pot and just drop it in there. You know, a lot of these different size plastic pots fit right in there, but if you want to plant in here, then you want to use charcoal. Charcoal is going to take any of that moisture that sits down the bottom as it gets absorbed back through the plant or back through the soil. Then it goes through the charcoal, and the charcoal will disinfect it, basically clean your water. So if you've ever been near a swampy area or an area that is tidal and you've got lots of mud in there, you're going to smell that kind of swampy smell, and that's what can happen when moisture sits in soil for too long. So if we just filled this pot full of soil and watered it, and the water just wasn't getting used as effectively or as used as much, then the soil is going to stay moist for too long. It's going to become like that kind of swampy condition, and then that's not good for your plants. So charcoal will help disinfect that. So that's a great option too. And we carry charcoal. You can get a nice big bag of it. This is horticultural charcoal. You want to make sure you get a horticultural charcoal. Wouldn't go out and use your charcoal for your grill, but use a horticultural charcoal, and that way you know it's safe for your plants, and it's designed to improve the harmful impurities that get built up in moisture that sits for too long. So use charcoal if you have a pot that doesn't have holes. Now, some pots that don't have holes can be drilled, and you can create a drainage hole. So that's another option as well. Let's see, I think we have a couple questions. Do you all carry donkey tails? I don't know. I think we have carried them. I don't know if I currently have them. So Joyce, we'll check into that, and maybe my team will be able to get back to you and find out if we have donkey tails in right now. Will succulents have flowers? Yes, a lot of succulents do flower. So you can actually see this little succulent hanging basket behind me. We've got all these long shoots. They might flower. We've got a couple here. As you can see, those kind of long shoots coming out, and those can flower. A lot of indoor succulents aren't going to bloom. Let's see, I had one over here. It's a great example. So this one's been potted up already, and you can see that kind of bloom coming out here, that bloom stalk kind of shooting up. Now, this might not ever show color. It might just be forming another succulent, which is kind of natural as well. But a lot of succulents will bloom, especially outside. So let's see, I think I had one right here. So this is an outdoor succulent. So this is one of our perennial succulents. This one's called stone crop, Sedum variegated, but you can see those orange colored flowers coming out of the top. So a lot of succulents in the outdoor spaces will, because we've got more sun, more options for sun. So we've got a lot more chance there for it to bloom. But a lot of your outdoor succulents will bloom, almost all of them will, and most of your indoor succulents typically won't. And if they do, it's not really grown necessarily for its bloom. It's more grown for its foliage. My weekly planting fix, always a drain hole and gritty mix. I love succulents. Great, Sherry. So yeah, so using a good succulent mix. All right, so we've talked about the sun, the soil, and the pots. Now we need to talk about watering. Watering requirements are going to vary, of course, depending on your house, depending on where you've got them. So let's talk about indoor spaces. Indoor spaces, watering our succulent planters is important. One, does it have a drain hole? Then we can water it a little bit heavier and let it sit and let the water drain out, and then we can let it really dry out before the next watering. That's what I prefer to do, is more of a wet-dry cycle. Now, on a typical indoor plant, like let's say a pothos or an aglaonemia, you're going to do a wet-dry cycle, which is very common and a very commonly used thing. But when we say dry, we mean like the top 2 to 3 inches. Now with succulents, you almost want to let it get so dry that the soil begins to pull away from the pot. So let me pull this out. And this I'm going to show you, this is a Euphorbia, so it's not a true succulent, but you can see how dry that soil is. It's almost becoming like a cake. You can almost take like chunks of it out. Now that's naturally because it's a chunkier soil, but also because it's getting so dry that it's almost starting to pull away from the edge of the pot. Now that's about how dry we want to let our succulents get. Now if you don't have a drain hole in your container on an indoor space, then make sure to just water it a little bit and let it really dry out before you water it again. I don't typically recommend succulents for terrariums either, especially a closed bottle terrarium, because those are designed to be very humid conditions. They're designed to allow the moisture to collect at the bottom, get absorbed up through the soil, evaporate, collect up on top of the container and drop back down. So typically, I don't recommend using succulents in a closed terrarium. Now, an open terrarium like a fish bowl or a jar or some sort, you can do it. You just got to be careful. Make sure to use the charcoal and then make sure that you're letting it dry out between waterings. Does jade plant count as a succulent? Yes, it definitely does. Jade plants are great. I don't know if I grab one. I think this looks very similar to it. Oh, no, I did grab a jade. So here we go. I think this is. Yeah, so this is a succulent, a jade succulent. So you can see those little succulent leaves, definitely a succulent and an awesome option. And really cool looking just by itself. Now, outdoor succulent containers are going to dry out a lot easier, right? So outside, we've got a lot more ability for those succulents to dry out. Watering requirements outside is going to vary on the weather. In the spring, you're probably going to water it very infrequently, especially if we're getting rain. So if it's in an area that can get rain, so it's not on a covered porch, which typically isn't going to be enough sun, so typically you want to have your containers out in the sun and you don't want it under a covered area. But let's say you get a good amount of sun in a covered area, we're still going to have to water those containers. But again, one of the best tools you have is right here on your hand, your finger. Check the soil. If it feels dry, if it's starting to pull away from the edges, give it a good soaking and then let it dry out before the next watering. So you could water in the spring as little as maybe, once every 2 weeks, indoor or outdoor. Really depends. Check your soil. You can also get a moisture meter. So we've got our little moisture meter here. This is a pH, moisture, and light meter. So the light and the moisture meter are going to be great things to check for your succulent containers, because you're going to be able to check and see if you've got enough light. You're also going to be able to check your moisture level and see where it's at. So if you're not quite sure and you want to pick up one of these, it's a very inexpensive, great little tool to have, especially for our indoor growers. All right, so now we've talked about watering. One more tip on watering. For indoor succulents, and you're going to see this when I plant up a container, it might be hard to kind of water some of them. And this is a great example here. I got this other one that's planted up. It's a really cool kind of modern pot all planted up. So let's say you want to water the succulent container. Well, you can take it to the kitchen sink and you can water it. I do like to let my water indoors sit. So typically what I'll do is I'll say, oh, I need to water my plants. Trust me, they can probably make it one more day. And so unless they're extremely dry, then just use regular tap water. But great thing to do is fill up your watering can, let it sit overnight, because they can probably make it to the next day, then water the next day. Over that 24-hour period of your water sitting open, then a lot of those things will evaporate out, like the chlorine and different things, fluoride that we put into our drinking water. So tap water is perfectly fine. If you can let it sit for 24 hours, it's even better. And then, of course, if you can collect rainwater, it's the best. But I definitely recommend having a small watering can. It really helps. And you might even consider using a turkey baster. I love using a turkey baster around my home to water some of my plants, specifically if I've got a larger terrarium bowl, which I'll plant one up here. And you might find that you need to just water a couple of them. You don't need to water all of them. And so having a nice small watering can that can get right to the source is a great option. So always have a little watering can for your indoor succulents, but for all your indoor plants, it's a great thing to have around. All right, so watering is important. Outside, you don't have to worry too much. You're going to get a little bit more ability for it to dry out a little bit faster. All right, so watering is important, but we grow succulents so that we don't have to water as much. And that's probably the biggest tip, is don't water as frequently as you think you might need to. A lot of us baby our plants too much, and really if you push them a little bit, they'll probably be better off for it. All right, so the next thing is feeding your plants. Lots and lots of different ways to feed our succulents. For indoor, I typically recommend a liquid solution, and you can get specific ones. So you can get this Schultz Cactus So this is a Cactus. It's a 277, so it's a little bit higher on the phosphorus, which helps the root system. But Cactus Succulent, the water soluble, this is just a liquid. So you just drop a couple drops in your watering can. And you're going to use a water soluble. So this is our organic Spoma Cactus plant food. So that's another good option as well. And then of course you can use granular. You can use our green leaf, our organic green leaf plant food, which is a great option. We've also got our traditional green leaf. Now I'm going to recommend this for outdoor. For our outdoor containers, it's going to last a little bit longer. It's going to feed for about I'd say in a container, 6 to 8 weeks. In the ground, you can get 2 to 3 months out of it. But let's say about 1.5 to 2 months with a nice granular fertilizer. For our outdoor succulents, that's what I'm going to use. For our indoor succulents, I'm going to recommend a liquid plant food. Now, when to feed is probably the most important thing. We don't want to force succulents to grow, and that's what fertilizers do. That's what plant foods do, is they're going to feed them and encourage them to grow more. And we don't want to do that when we go into the winter months. So typically a feeding schedule for succulents is going to be between late spring, once we know that we're past the frost date, and once we know that our plants are starting to kind of be able to grow and our temperatures are a little bit warmer, and then all the way till about late summer. And we want to start cutting off when we get into the fall season. We don't want to push them to grow too much. We want to let them naturally go to their dormant state, which in indoor plants condition means that they're going to stay there. They're going to be evergreen. They're going to be there. They're just not going to want to grow as much, which means they don't need as much water, but they definitely don't need to be fed and forced to grow. So feeding is important. We want to make sure they get enough plant food, but it's not the end all be all because these plants are designed for stressful environments. So it's perfectly fine, but encouraging a good feeding schedule is very, very important. With a liquid, you're probably going to do it about every other watering, which for an indoor succulent, that might be, once a month because we're going to water them very infrequently. So always good to just kind of ask questions, let us know. Every situation is different and everything can be specific. We can get specific fertilizers. Sometimes we might use a Super Thrive or something to kind of help rejuvenate some succulents. Lots and lots of different options there. And then the last kind of tip that you'll see me do once I start planting up, which I'm about to start doing, the last tip is to do a little top dress. Mulch your plants. And I don't want you to use mulch necessarily. You might. It's not the end of the world. If you want to use some bark or something like that, like some orchid bark or even just a decorative bark mix that you want to put on the top surface, that's completely fine. But mosses and things like that are great options. I love to use this Western desert sand. You'll see me use this today. And what that does is just by finishing off around those cactus and succulents and different arid plants is they don't want a lot of moisture and they don't want to sit around a lot of moisture. And so having those over the top of the surface of the soil will allow those plants to not sit on moist soil. And what I mean by that is typically you're going to get plants that are low growing. Look at this aloe right here. Gorgeous looking aloe with that variegation, but it sits on the soil. And so, of course, in a container like this, it's going to be perfectly fine because the edge of the pot is protecting it from sitting on soil. But when I plant it up in a container that is going to have soil out here, then I might want some sand or some bark or rock or something like that, or even moss to kind of finish that off and make it look good, for one, but two, also protect that plant, the actual leaf of the plant, from sitting in a moist soil for too long. So that's a really, really helpful tip, and you'll see me do that here as I get started. All right, so I think Valerie said, great information. I will try again using your tips. I'm thinking it was me instead of where I bought the plants after listening to you. So Valerie, great. I'm glad you learned something. And the biggest thing is don't pamper your succulents too much. They really don't need to be pampered too much. Really, they're better off if you neglect them to some degree. We want to feed them, we want to make sure we water them, but we water them infrequently and we really don't mess with them, we just enjoy them. So just sit back and enjoy them. All right, so now I'm going to plant up some containers. I've got lots and lots of succulents. Actually, before I start, let me just tell you a couple things, and I'm going to show you some of these and so you can see them up close, but also a couple ideas. So you saw that Euphorbia right here. Great one. And this is just dropped in. So you can do that. You don't have to plant up combinations. You can just drop a single plant in a container. It's a very modern look. This is one of my favorite succulents. It's actually a cactus. I think it's called pencil cactus. So it's a Euphorbia. It's a pencil cactus Euphorbia. So it's really, really cool looking. I just love that modern look. It looks like coral, but it's just really, really cool looking. And these look great just by themselves, dropped into a nice pot. So I can just drop this in here. Fits perfectly, and I can grow this in there for a long time, and it's really, really cool looking. Just make sure to give it a lot of bright light. So this is a great option for your indoor areas. Also your outdoor areas. You can buy simple single ones that are in a nice little decorative pot already done for you with a little bit of rock around it. Here's another example. So just really, really cool looking succulents. They are great by themselves. And of course I showed you these other two earlier. You can get them already pre-planted up here at the garden center. So you can get these nice little collections in different types of pots. So you can see that as well. Look at all those different colors. So we've got this kind of lime green, then we've got this bluish green and really blue, and then almost has a little bit of the pink and purple tones in that one. So just a great little collection of succulents. So you can get them already done for you, or if you just want one, you can just get one and drop it into a pot. It's that easy. Now, what we're going to talk about today is planting up combinations. So I want to show you a couple more of these indoor succulents before I get started. Some of the things that I might use. And I'll try and pronounce these names without messing them up. So that's another succulent. Now, a lot of times on our containers, you're just going to see it listed as a succulent, which is perfectly fine. We've got an assortment of succulents. Some of them are going to say it's a Haworthia or a jade or aloe specific ones. This one is a agave, I believe. Yep, so an agave. So you can see there's lots and lots of different looks and lots of different names. But we keep them all in one section because these can all take very, very dry conditions. Another kind of succulent type of plant is a Calanchoe or a Calandiva. So these are also great plants. These are great blooming plants. So if you're looking to add some color to your containers and you want an easy plant, this is a great option, this Calanchoe. Some people might call them Calanchos, but Calanchoes are awesome, easy plants to grow. I think this one might have been a different name. That's another Calanchoe, so look at that. So it's very similar plants, same type of plant, different look, right? So you can get lots and lots of different choices. These are just a small assortment here, and I love these little miniatures. These are a lot of fun, so I'm going to plant up a container with these. So just all of those different colors. I love these little miniature plants. They're a great deal. You can get a huge diversity. I absolutely love this. I think they used to call it a panda succulent. They've got this kind of furry kind of leaf to it, and I love those little dark spots that get on the edges. They are really cool. So there's lots and lots of choices. There's some that have, look like little elephant's feet. Sometimes we'll get the living stones in. I didn't see any in right now, but sometimes we'll get the living stones in. There's another really kind of cool one. So there's so many cool ones. There's so many different ones. And of course, string of pearls is extremely popular right now. As I see Jacqueline just mentioned, our string of pearl succulents, hard to keep growing. Yes, string of pearls are, again, watch your watering, give them a good amount of light. So bright light and watch your watering. We don't want to overwater them. And this is string of fish hooks. So I grabbed this one because that one's kind of a new one to me. I know string of bananas, string of dolphins, string of pearls. I had never seen string of fish hooks. So what that is kind of looks like a string of bananas, but they're just a little bit longer, and it kind of turns over and kind of has like a little fish hook look to it. So yes, string of pearls and string of fish hooks, they're all great succulents as well. There's just so many different options. And we're going to use some of these mini ones to plant up here in a minute. And then, of course, our perennial succulents, our outdoor succulents. Some of my favorites. Now, I grabbed this purple heart because it's not a true succulent by nature. It's a secretia. But these are very, very drought-tolerant plants. So if you're looking for a good drought-tolerant plant, and all of these can grow in the landscape as well. So if you want to plant some of these in the landscape, they work great in the landscape, but also great for containers, and that's what we're talking about today. But here's just a different color of one. And then you've got different sizes too. So this is my autumn fire sedum. Autumn fire is awesome. It grows as a bush. I mean, it does go dormant in the winter, so it typically is going to die off to the ground. Once we get a frost, it's going to kind of melt away. You just cut it off of the ground. But this thing can get about, 24 to 36 inches. I think I had one that almost was 36. So this one says 20 to 24 inches, 18 inches wide. But it grows in like a perfect little gumdrop, ball shape. It's really, really awesome. And then it blooms as we get later into the summer season, almost fall. It gets these huge red blooms on the top of its, on the top of the plant. Really cool. Bees love it. Bees will go crazy for it. So it's a great kind of late nectar source for bees that are getting ready to go into the winter season and not have a lot of nectar sources. It's a great option for that, but great in the landscape, but also awesome in containers. Really, really cool one. One of my favorites for outside is the Sedum Angelina, that great chartreuse lime green. This one's evergreen. It actually turns bright red in the winter, and you can see it blooming right there with a little yellow flower. Not real noticeable on this plant. Tons and tons of Hens and Chicks. I mean, just absolutely, we got a great assortment of them right now. So there's one. Just really that kind of cool look. There's another red one. And you can see all the chicks hanging off of it. We'll talk about those when I use those to plant up. And then our tricolor sedum, one of my favorites because it gives that variegated look. It's called tricolor because it's actually got a little pink in it. So you can barely see it probably on the camera, but it is a really, really cool looking one. And then of course, ice plant is considered a succulent too. So ice plants, you know, you probably are used to those. They grow great in the landscape, great little ground cover. Blooms with a really cool looking bloom. So I think this one's yellow. Let's see, bright yellow flowers. So these bloom in the summer. They're awesome. And then of course, annuals. You still have some annual options. I've got these hanging baskets here. This is a Miso, a trailing Miso vine, but this is a succulent as well. Let's see if I can get this a little bit closer. You can see it's got little tiny red blooms on it. There you go. You can see that one right there, right in the middle there. See if I can find it with my finger. Kind of almost like a pink, but really a red when it gets on that variegated foliage. So if you're looking for a container, a hanging basket that you can't get to in water as much, Miso vine is a great option. And these can actually grow in a little bit of shade as well. And then of course there's portulaca and purslane. They're annuals. They're going to die off in the winter and not come back like some of these perennials. A lot of these are evergreen, but the portulaca blooms profusely all summer long. Great in containers. Let's see, string of frogs, string of watermelons, string of hearts, string of turtles. So many strings. I know there's a lot of them out there. And we're trying to get as many as we possibly can. I think we had some string of bananas. I know we had some string of pearls, but they go fast. So you just kind of have to keep checking back with us if you're interested in them. Gorgeous in hanging baskets. That's why I grabbed this one. I think this one's just a succulent assorted, but you can kind of see that kind of corally look. So you can do them in hanging baskets, you can drop them into a container, or you can plant up a combination. And that's what we're going to do now. I'm going to start with the indoor succulents. So we're going to start with those. I'm going to start with a very, very small, using some of those minis. We've got lots and lots of pots. Great options. So this is a great little modern look. So this is a nice little pot here. I might actually try and get a little bit of a riser here so we can see this a little bit better. I'm going to plant this clay bowl up later, which I absolutely love clay with the succulents and cactus. Gives it that really cool look. But there we go. Now you can see it a little bit better. All right. So this is just a very simple little container. The reason I grabbed this one is because it's small. And that's the other cool thing about succulents. You can plant these in bowls. A lot of times you're going to see them in a lower bowl, like this succulent bowl, or this is probably the one I'm going to do next for my indoor. Now these can be used inside or outside, but you can see it's a very low bowl and it doesn't have a ton of soil because succulents don't need a lot of soil to grow in. So it doesn't just have to be a regular standard container. Like I love these kind of longer ones. These are really pretty. Great option, but you don't have to have the depth that you typically do with other plants. You don't need it to be a super, super deep container. So something like this is going to work great, and it looks awesome on like a coffee table, on a dining table, wherever you want to put it around your home, just making sure that it gets enough light. You can take them outside too. Talk about that as we kind of start planting this one up. You can take your indoor succulents outside for a summer vacation. Of course, Mother Nature didn't create indoor plants. We did. We found out that these plants like the indoor temperature, that consistent kind of 70 to 75 degrees is what they love. So for your indoor spaces, these plants can go outside. The biggest advice that I can give you for taking plants outside, so your indoor plants, taking them outside for a summer vacation, is one, don't take them out too early for sure, but also make sure to transition them from the outdoor space, from the inside space to the outdoor space slowly. And that means taking them out, putting them in a little bit of shade, and then slowly working them to more sun. In fact, a lot of your outdoor succulents will do fine with a little bit of shade throughout the day. So for a covered porch, might work well. They'll enjoy the temperatures. They'll enjoy the ability for the container to dry out a little bit faster, but you won't have to have them in full blazing sun all day long. And you can gradually work them to the sunnier spots around your home. You just don't want to take them from your indoor space straight out to full sun because that can burn them up pretty quickly. All right, so I'm going to start with this little container. This one comes with a saucer, so it's just a nice little simple modern white pot. I chose this one because I can probably fit 4 to 5 of these little minis in there, and so that's what I'm going to try and do. I'm going to use this Espoma Organic Cactus Mix first. And that way you can see kind of what these cactus mix look like. It's going to look very similar to the soil. Well, let's see. Let me see if I can show this to you. So it's a nice, rich looking soil, but when you feel it, it's going to have more grit to it. So it's going to have a little bit of a gritty feel to it. So perfectly, very, very good soil designed specifically for cactuses. I don't need a whole lot of soil. This has a drain hole, so my pot has a drain hole, so I don't need to worry about putting down charcoal or anything like that. If I were, then what you want to do is if you've got a container that you're planting in that doesn't have a drain hole, then you want to, and a great example would be this guy. So this one that's already planted up, no drain hole at the bottom. But what they've done here is they've put rock on the bottom and then a layer of charcoal and then your potting soil. And what that does again is, as I mentioned earlier, the moisture will collect down on the bottom, and then as the plant needs it, it absorbs, goes through the charcoal. It's a very important part to take those impurities out of the water that has been sitting there, goes through the charcoal, disinfects it, gets back up into the soil, and then the plant can use it. If you ever grow in a container that doesn't have a drain hole, make sure to use charcoal, but also if you feel like you've overwatered it, you can always take your planter and turn it and pour out the excess water. So just kind of hold your plants, make sure that they're protected a little bit, and you can always usually pour out the excess water out of the edge if you need to. So it's a very, very easy thing to do. All right, so I've got probably about as much soil as I need in there. So I've got it about halfway full because I'm going to use these little mini plants. So I'm going to use these little minis here. So I don't need a huge amount of depth. And I'm going to place them around, and then I'm going to plant some other things, and I'm going to top dress it so you can kind of see what that looks like. All right, so what I like to do with my succulent containers, my bowls, or anything like that, is I want to range in heights and I want different colors. So when I plant up containers usually, I always talk about our spillers, thrillers, and fillers. Doesn't necessarily need to be the case in this case. What I want to do is I want to fill it up. I don't want to have a lot of extra soil capacity because we don't want to plant, as I mentioned earlier, one little plant in a lot of excess soil because that can hurt it over time. So let's see, I really, really love this little, looks like almost like a pencil cactus and maybe a Euphorbia of some sort. I just really like the color on that. It's got a lot of different colors. It's got some little brown markings on it. Really cool looking one. And these are great. These are a great deal too. $3.29 for a little tiny succulent. It's an awesome deal. So I got that one in there. And that's going to be a nice little bit of height, so it's going to give me a little bit of height. And then what I usually do is I just take a little bit of extra soil and just push it up around it so it can stay in one kind of place. I've got that kind of on the back corner. So I know this is tiny, itty bitty, so you can't quite see it, but I've got that on one corner. And then I just kind of pick things that I like in different colors. You really can't mess this part up. I want to do something that's going to be a little bit lower. So I've got this guy. I don't know if it tells me. This is a Haworthia as well. And I love these. These do great. Always when we're taking our little tiny succulents out of the container, give the pot a little squeeze. It'll loosen it away from the side walls. And then just gently grab it. Typically, I try not to grab things from the top if I can, but some of these little tiny things you got to. I'm going to add a little bit of soil just to get me up to the size that I need to be in. And I'm going to see if I can get 5 in here because I want it to be pretty tight and I want it to show pretty well too. Maybe I've got people coming over this weekend and I want to have a little talking point or a little something to put on the table that looks great and finished off. So maybe I'll fill this one up a little bit more. So now I've got my little Haworthia in there. All right. Let's see, what else? There's so many different ones to choose from. I really love these Panda Plants, so I might put one of those in. But I feel like what I've got here is I've got that kind of almost white color with this. I've got these have little white tips to it. So I think I want something with maybe a little bit of height, maybe some blue color in it. So I've got a couple options here. I've got this little guy kind of standing up almost like a cactus. Or this one's really cool. Got a couple different options there. I think I'm going to go with this one. I'm going to put this in the center. And typically I would say loosen up your root ball a little bit. These are tending to kind of loosen up a little bit as I'm taking them out of the pot. So we want to kind of allow our root system to take. So I'll show you on the next one kind of how I take it out. And we just want to be very, very careful with the root system. We don't want to tear it up. Now I'm going to want to go back to a lower. So I'll show you where I'm at here. So I've got this guy in the middle. I've got this guy on the edge. And I'm going to fill up these two last spots here. Maybe I want to kind of throw in that kind of purple color because there's a little bit of purple in that kind of pencil cactus looking plant. So this one's kind of cool. So this one's got some of that kind of purple color in it. It's that darker look. So you can see not a ton of root system, so I don't really need to disturb it too much. As I put it in the pot, I'm going to take it and just kind of gently rub the edges of the side of the root ball so that I can loosen up that root system and allow it to kind of know that it's in a different soil, and that way it'll take a little bit better. And then I think I'm going to do another kind of lower one that's kind of in the bluish color as well. Let's see. I really love that lime green. I wish I had used that. This one's kind of cool. Kind of a low growing. And you can always kind of play with it and put them around and just kind of see what you like. I think I'm going to do, maybe I'll do this guy. It's kind of cool looking elephant foot looking guy. Kind of almost looks like coral as well. And really, again, you don't have to be super specific. You can do some color arrangements and you can look at some colors and some of the finer colors. And I'll show you that here in a little bit. All right, so now we've got it planted up. Really cool looking, looks great. You can't mess this up. I mean, it's so easy when you're just putting all your favorites in there and you're just picking out the ones that you like. Now the tricky part is getting the soil all into all those different little areas because we got to fill in all the little gaps. I love to use these little pots that we just use to plant because I can kind of pinch it on the side and create a little funnel system, and then I can just put it down in there. So we're just trying to avoid getting it all over the leaves because we want our plants to be clean looking too. So it's not going to hurt the plant, but we just want to make sure that we're kind of keeping our plants clean and getting the soil around all of those little gaps. So bear with me for a second. This is a little time consuming. Just want to make sure that we're getting, and it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. That's okay because again, these plants don't need a ton of soil capacity and they don't need it to be 100% perfect. We just want to make sure we're filling in those gaps. So as you water this and the soil begins to settle a little bit, then it's not going to settle kind of, funny and have a lot of hills and valleys in there, especially because I want to top dress this. All right, so now we've got it all planted up. I've got all my little gaps filled. I got one little tiny gap over here. I'm just going to fill that in. And then just make sure your plants are all positioned the way you want them before you finish it off. Make sure it's exactly what you want. And you can kind of manipulate your plants a little bit. So I always talk about that, when you got a plant that you want to kind of hang over the edge or be on the side of something, then you can just kind of push it gently and it'll kind of be able to grow in that area. All right, so there we go. It's all planted up. Really cool looking. And now the tricky part is kind of top dressing it and finishing it off. Because I'm going to use a liquid plant food on there, I don't need to add a fertilizer right now. I'll do that with my other container when I do my outdoor containers. But for this inside one, now I just got to pick out my covering. You can use a sand. I love the sand. For this, I'm going to keep it kind of very sleek and modern. Even kind of like a gray stone would look good. The river gravel might look good, but I'm going to keep this all kind of white. So I'm going to use this, keep it very kind of, that classic kind of modern style. So I'm going to use this white marble. So these are tiny little white marble chips. Let me take, again, I'm going to use one of these little tiny pots here because they're very easy to use. And I'm just going to scoop some of this white marble out. Now these are nice little small white marble chips. I don't know if you can see that. But that's going to be really, really nice to kind of top dress this off with. And you could use something like a piece of paper too and just fold it into like a funnel so that you can kind of funnel it down through there. Just make sure your opening at the end is big enough. But this really will help keep the moisture off of the leaves of the plants. It also is great if you have fungus gnats. If you've got fungus gnat issues with any plant, I mean, that's a great tip for any kind of indoor plant. If you have fungus gnats, put some sort of top dressing over the top. Sand works great, but rock works as well, because the fungus gnat, needs to be able to get down into the surface of the soil in order to lay its eggs. And so, the gnat larva is a swimmer, and it's going to want to swim through that organic matter and that moisture in the organic matter. And so what you want to do is make sure you want it to be at least about 1/2 inch. That allows the fungus gnats not to be able to get down and lay their eggs into the soil. All right, so I think I'm pretty much there. I'm just going to try and drop a couple in around this last few plants. I'm trying to cover up all the soil. That really allows the fungus gnats to not get in, but also it just really finishes it off and really makes it look cool. So now I just kind of clean off the edges, give it a little dust off here. All right, and there's my succulent container. Look at that. So it really, all the white pot, the white rock really sets those off and allows those little miniature succulents to look great by themselves. And I've got a little tray that it can sit on, so now I can water this and it's ready to roll, and I can use my liquid plant food on my next watering. I typically like them to kind of get acclimated for the first couple weeks, and so then after my first watering, I'll let it really dry out. We want to let it really get dry, and then I can give it a liquid plant food after that. So this is a great little container, very easy to do. And love those little miniatures because you get so many different selections there. So let's see, Francis said, I got that Miso last year at a farmer's market. I was able to keep it over the winter. I love it. Yep, and actually somebody on our marketing team, our marketing director, actually kept her Miso through the winter as well. It's doing awesome. So sometimes they can come back. We had a very mild winter, so that was great. Shirley said bonsai pots. Yep, I actually grabbed a bonsai pot. Bonsai pots work great for succulents. They look really cool in here, so great option as well. I don't know that I'm going to do one today because I want to do maybe some bigger collections here, but that's a great option. If accidentally broke a piece, will it grow roots I just put into the soil? And Shirley, stick around because I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. Veronica said, beautiful, thank you. Joyce, slow release fertilizer. Okay, yeah, a granular fertilizer like our green leaf is perfectly fine for your indoor succulents. It's a little bit stronger than I typically like for my indoor succulents, so you got to be careful about when you use that one because it's going to feed for a long time. So if you're using something like Osmocote or our green leaf, perfectly fine. Just realize when you fed, maybe start a little calendar. I always keep a little calendar on my outside fridge, and then that way I can always kind of check it off and write things in there, so I can always flip back and look and see when I did things. Of course, we've got cell phones, smartphones. Use that just so you know that you're not overfeeding it and when your last feed was, because you want to stop around the end of September typically is when you want to stop feeding your succulents, especially your indoor succulents. Outdoor succulents you're a little bit more variable with, but indoor succulents you don't want to force to start growing in that late September time frame. So we want to make sure if you're using a slow release that we're finishing that up. Usually the last one you would do is like early August. So that way it's run its course by the time we're starting to go into its non-growing phase in the late fall all the way through the winter. All right, so the next one I want to do, I think I'm going to use this bowl because I can put more in it. So I got this bowl here. I grabbed a pair of gloves just to say if you're using like cactus. I don't know if I'm going to use this cactus or not. I might, but if I do, I'll have to put on a pair of gloves. So that's why I brought the gloves, is you might need some gardening gloves when planting some of these sharper succulents. Even this Euphorbia has got little spikes on the edge. So even the Euphorbia might have a little bit of tendency to prick. And that one I might actually use in here. So this will be really fun. A little bit more growing space, a little bit more growing area. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up my pot with some soil. The easy part. And you can see this one's got a drain hole as well. I'm not putting anything over top of my drain hole. I could, if you want to put like a coffee filter or a little bit of rock, that's fine if you're worried. But a lot of times if you're using a good high quality potting soil like the Spoma Organic Cactus Mix, then you're not going to have issues with that drain hole clogging up. That would be the only reason that you really would put some rock down on the bottom or coffee filters if you're worried about that drain hole clogging up. Maybe it's too small or something. So just that's why I typically don't put anything over the bottom of my drain hole. But you can. Broken clay pots are great. Awesome option. So use up those things. Okay, I'm just breaking up my soil, leveling it out here. All right, so I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. I'm going to use some of my bigger succulents in this one, maybe the jade, some of the different Horthias, and maybe a Euphorbia, and just throw in some different things. I love this aloe, but I think that might be too big. That might encompass too much space. So I'm going to kind of put that out of the way here. Bring this over. All right. We'll get the rock out of the way for the time being. We'll probably come back to that one. Let me clean up my workspace here. All right, so I think I want to use some of the bigger plants in here. I want to make it kind of look, very impactful. Again, it's a low bowl. It doesn't need a whole lot of space to grow in because these plants don't need a whole ton of soil capacity. I think I'm going to use this Euphorbia. I really like this guy. He's tall, he's different looking, and so this is a lot of times what concerns people. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Take your time, be very careful. This is a deeper pot. This is a 6-inch container, and this one's only about 4 inches deep. So you can see the difference there. But that's okay. We can take some of that soil off the bottom, and we can be very, very careful with it. So I think I'm going to put this probably right about at the center of the planter. Now I'm going to be careful. I'm going to try not to use my gloves here. I'm just going to give, this one's really, really dry, so I'm just going to give it a nice little gentle tug. All right, so now we got it out of the pot. Perfect. And now I'm just going to gently take this root system and I want to break off from the bottom. So you can see I'm just gently breaking off the bottom. There's not a whole lot of roots, ton of roots in that area. So it's going to be perfectly fine with what I'm doing to it. And this is a really good you can see that loose potting mix. Perfectly fine. What we want to do is we want to try and keep as much around the outside of it, but we're just trying to get it a little bit of a lower profile. And what's cool about succulent containers is you can have it have a little bit of height there in the center. So you can actually have it kind of build up and slope back down, which is what I'm going to do with this one. All right, so we got that in there. And that's going to have a little bit more height, so that actual planting height is slightly above the grade of the pot. I'm going to show you how you can work that as we work down. Now, I know somebody mentioned earlier about if a piece breaks off, can you plant it? Yes, you can, and there's lots and lots of different ways of doing that. People talk about using rooting hormone or different things with succulents. You don't really have to be too picky about it. A lot of people say let it scab over. You can do that, and that's not a problem. So what that means is, let's say we lose this leaf right here. I'm going to take this one that's way under here. So that leaf falls off, and we want to try and grow and propagate from there. You can let this little open wound area scab up. That's perfectly fine, or you can just put this in some soil. And what you want to do is just lay it right on the top surface of the soil, and then just make sure the top surface of that soil stays moist somewhat consistently. It's okay if it dries out for a little bit, but you want to keep a little bit of moisture on that top surface of that soil. Perfectly fine, just lay it right on there. And there's lots of different ways of doing that. Different ones, you might just stick directly in the soil, like a lot of times with our outdoor succulents. You might lose a piece, like this one I grabbed earlier. I grabbed the plant and this piece fell off. It's actually got a little bit of root system hanging on the end there. So I can plant this right into some soil. I can just lay it on the soil. It's probably going to root in and take perfectly fine. All right, so now this Euphorbia I love because it's got this dark purple color, and then it goes to this bright lime green up at the top. So we got lots of colors to work there. I'm going to try and work with a little bit more color in this one. And we're going to keep it a little bit on the darker side with these purples. And I'm going to use some of these bigger succulents so that we've got a nice impactful container. All right, so I'm just going to plant this one right here. We're going to do kind of a simple right around the edge kind of look here. We might throw in some miniatures just to kind of change up the size and the look there. And then I'm going to also kind of face them out a little bit. So there we go. So we got that one planted in there. Very, very easily done. Let's see, I also love this aloe. I absolutely love that variegation to it. So let's see, does that look, I think it looks good because the lime green in there pulls out some of the lime green, and it's a sharp contrast to this other succulent, that kind of Echeveria look there. Let's be gentle. Try not to break these up too much. Just loosen up the root system. We don't need as much on the bottom, so I'm just taking off some of that bottom surface area, and you can see the roots hanging. That's perfectly fine. All I gotta do is just make my little space here. Drop that guy right in there. And what I love about this one is it kind of hangs over the side too, so it's really, really cool looking and just adds a lot of different texture, a lot of different color, and it's going to work great right there. Perfect little spot for it. I got one of the aloe blades kind of shooting on the inside to kind of cover up a little bit of space, so that looks really, really cool. All right, now what else do I want to do? I could do the jade. I don't know if I am. Actually, I think I am going to do the jade. And the reason I'm going to do the jade plant is because it's got this really cool little tip to it. So it's got a little bit of that maroon purple on the tip, but it brings back that green color, which is going to be a great kind of contrast. So we're just going to take this one out gently. I've actually ended up with more soil than I need right now. So I'm going to take a little bit of this extra soil out. Just be very careful. Make sure to take very good care of this. And just gently, we're just taking off a little bit of that surface area of the bottom of the plant, just so we can get it in there. And again, I'm probably putting these in a little bit closer than I maybe normally would. I'd like to give them a little bit of space to grow a little bit more, but they grow pretty slow. I'm going to put this in a lot of sun, and I want a little bit of instant gratification. The cool thing about this is you can change them. So you can actually take these succulents, if there's something that is a very, very personal plant to you and you want to be able to move it and interchange it, you can actually take these and plant them into this succulent mix in its plastic pot, because then you can hide the top. Now what you got to do is you got to be careful, because plastic's not going to absorb moisture, so it's also not going to release it. So when you plant it in a bowl like this, it's going to be perfectly fine because we got a nice gritty mix around it. But be careful with that, but that is an option as well, is you can plant it actually in that and just kind of hide it with the soil and the top dressing. All right, so we still got a little bit more soil. I'm going to turn this so you can kind of see what I'm working on now. I'm working on this back portion here. I'm going to take, as you can see, I'm full. I got plenty of soil, extra soil over here. So I'm just going to take some of that excess soil out. We'll use that later for sure. All right, so what else do I want to do? I've got some blues here. I love these blue guys. That's going to add a lot of color, and it really pulls into that aloe. So I think I'm going to use this one. As long as we keep this planter in a lot of sun, it's going to look great for years, and I don't really have to worry about changing it. Now, eventually I might have to replant some things. I might have to take some out and replant it. That's part of growing in containers, is the ability to go and change it in the future. You might have to. It's not a problem. So there we go. You can see that really pulls into that aloe there, pulls the blue out of the aloe, ties into this lime green at the top of this Euphorbia. So this is really coming together nicely. All right, and then I've got one little space here. So let's see, what else do I want to put in there? We got lots and lots of choices here. Look at this guy. Really cool with all that variegation and different color. And I think I like that actually. It's going to be kind of different looking. I don't think I need to do another Echeveria. Got lots of options here. I could have done some of the miniatures, but I think this is going to finish it off nicely. This almost looks like an aloe. I'm not quite sure if it is. It might be a Horothea. But this one's a great looking color. It's got some of this pink color in it, which is going to tie into that burgundy there. So it's going to look really cool. And that's what I always do when I'm planting up containers. I'm trying to look for some of those smaller colors, trying to see if I can pull them out. But really with a succulent container, it's all about just kind of diversity and different looks, because it just guides the eye right around. You can keep it very consistent. You can keep them all very similar, but you can also mix them up and do lots of different things. All right, so there we go. So that's a really cool looking, very rustic kind of container, very contemporary kind of cool look. And then we just want to top dress it. So really I've got enough soil pretty much everywhere. I don't think I need to fill in anywhere with my soil. Let me just check. I'll go around the whole container, kind of tamping it down. We don't want to push too hard in there. And I found a nice little area that needs a little bit of soil. I'll just grab a little bit just to fill in there. And what's cool about this container too is it's got that slope to it. So when you hold it up to eye level, you can see almost the soil coming up. And what that's really going to do is it's really going to pop when we put our soil cover on it. It's going to really look good. I'm going to take this tag off so we don't see that anymore. And then it's what color do I want to use? I mean, I love white rock because it kind of really makes the plants pop. I'll probably save the sand for the outside one because I think that'll look good. So let's see. I think I might do this river gravel. This will look cool. It's kind of a dark colored river gravel. It's a small little river gravel too, which makes it really nice. So let me show you before I put it in there. Kind of a really nice kind of, it's got lots of different colors in it. It's got some of that red, some of that clay. So really kind of cool looking. I'm going to use my little pot again because that was unsuccessful. All right, so we'll get my little pot and we'll go around and fill this up. And again, this just finishes off, allows the plants not to absorb a lot of moisture. And it's going to look really, really cool. And if you get it into some of the plants, that's perfectly fine. Some of these plants have these little areas where they can hold some of that rock. That's okay. We can go in there with a fine tooth, maybe like tweezers or something later if I need to. But also when I water it, it might kind of loosen that out of there as well. But you're really going to see this slope when I get done with this rock. And this is, I think, this is like the fun part for me. This is like the nice kind of zen time where I can kind of relax and just finish off the container. And it's a really cool kind of process to kind of see it all come together at the end. And again, there's lots of different types of these amendments to put on top. There's just traditional kind of gray stone. You can even use soil perfector. I don't know if you know what a Spoma soil perfector is, but basically we use it as kind of a mold protector for our plants out in the garden. But it's got a really cool kind of gray color to it, very modern looking. So really, really good option. All right, I think this one's going to have to go on the sales floor. Somebody's going to have to buy this one. This one turned out really cool. All right, so now I can hold this up and I'll show you the whole thing finished off. So you can just see how that rock just adds that different element. It blends in with the pot, which is really nice. And then all those plants just pop right out of it. You can see a little bit more of that rock right there. A couple of little pieces fall out. But this has a lot going on with it. This is very, very packed. I might not have planted as many in here, but these are going to last for a long time in here. Again, if this gets full sun, this is going to do well as long as it's indoor. We want to keep this as an indoor container. And as long as it gets a good amount of light during the day, these are going to stay nice and compact. And eventually I'll have to go and refurbish it. Probably 2 or 3 years down the road, I'll have to go in. Now, some of these plants are going to grow a little bit different and grow in different shapes and styles and habits. Some of them are going to pop out new plants and little babies. This little jade plant usually will lose some of its lower leaves and turn a little bit into a tree form. And if it hangs over on this side, even better. I think they're cool looking when they kind of do their own thing and add different looks to them. So that's a really, really nice little container. I'm happy about that. We'll put that one off to the side. Let's see if there's any questions. Love the different height. I put in a handsome rock in the arrangement also in a figurine. Awesome option. I actually grabbed some rocks. So I've got a big rock right here. We'll use that on my outdoor container because my outdoor one's going to get a little bit bigger and it's going to need a little bit more to fill in. So let me just move some of these plants out of my way. Clean up my mess. Let's see, can I mix outdoor succulents with indoor succulents and keep it indoors? Yes, a lot of these indoor succulents will do fine inside. Some of them do need to go into that dormancy. So that would be one where I would probably ask us the questions just when you come in and you're looking at them and you say, okay, can this one grow? So like the Sedum Angelina can grow year round. that one can grow inside. It's an evergreen, can grow inside. Some of them that need to go dormant, like the ice plant, for example. A lot of the ice plants go dormant. They need that dormant time frame to kind of rejuvenate, kind of go and take it easy, kind of take their winter sleep, and then they'll come back in the springtime. But lots of the hens and chicks will do fine. Some of the other ones, like I didn't show, I think this is Dragon's Blood. Dragon's Blood is one of my favorites. This one doesn't have as much of the red color yet, but it will get a fair amount of red. And that one's evergreen, and that one can grow inside as well. So again, Mother Nature didn't intend on indoor plants, but indoor plants, while they're not going to grow year-round, are going to be there year-round, and they don't need to go dormant like some of the plants do. All right, so let's see. I think I'm at a fair amount of time here, so I think I'm going to plant up maybe just one pot for outside. Now, outside, you can do lots of different options. Let's see, for this one, I love just a taller clay pot. Will look great with some of those bigger succulents in them. So just like something like that in there, and maybe one or two other. You could keep your spiller and thriller filler recipe. We could do a thriller with the autumn sedum, and then we could do a spiller, and then we can just do like a filler with the hens and chicks. That would look great. You can also include, if you want to do a big one, I almost consider doing a really, really big container, but that's where I might use something like a yucca, or some of the agaves are really cool. I'm going to use this as my riser for this one, so that way you can kind of see it. Let me show you these guys I grabbed. These are different types of agaves. So that's one agave right there. Really cool look, kind of just spiky, almost looks like a yucca. I also grabbed this ice plant so you can see all those different crazy kind of color blooms that you get on ice plants. Now, ice plants are going to need sun to bloom, so in here I don't have sunlight, so these aren't going to bloom in here typically. But outside, like portulaca purslane, they need sun. Here's another, I think this is an agave. Really cool looking. Look, you can't even see it, but when we look down in there, really cool looking agave. I might try and squeeze that in here if I can. We'll see. All right, so outside container, I'm going to use my all-purpose potting soil. Now I can use the cactus mix, that's perfectly fine, but being an outdoor container, I know I'm going to be able to dry out a little bit more, and so I want to show you this potting soil as well. It's not going to have as much grit to it, perfectly fine. These succulents can grow in our ground soil. So again, if you need a bigger bag of soil, this all-purpose potting soil is literally all-purpose. It works great in all conditions. So again, I've got a drain hole. I don't need to add any thing to the bottom. I don't need to drill a hole. I don't need to do any charcoal or rock or anything. Now, a lot of people will take like an old bird bath and plant in there, and that's great. Old bird baths, hopefully it's got a crack in it. That's why you're planting in it. If it doesn't, or you feel like you need to add a drain hole, you can use a masonry bit on your drill and drill some holes in it, or you can add some charcoal to the bottom. And then, of course, if it gets waterlogged, if it's holding water, you can just tip it over, and a lot of that water will pool out. You can also use that turkey baster trick and suck some of that moisture out if you get too much water in there. All right. Can I mix outdoor? So I answered that question. I think I got everybody's question there. Deborah, hi from Richmond. Hey. All right. So love a low, large pot. Yep, Joyce. I love these kind of low ones. And you can get big, huge terracotta bowls. I love these. So we're going to make this maybe a little bit more kind of deserty looking by using that sand to top dress. So in that case, I think what I'm going to do is see, I got so many choices. I absolutely love this tricolor sedum. So I actually love this sedum. So I'm going to use this one to start with. I'm going to put this on the edge because it'll spill. As you can see, it's kind of spilling over. So we're just going to give the sides a little kind of squeeze. Take the pot off, take the tag out. And now this one, again, same thing. We've got a deeper root system. Now this one actually has the root system all the way down. And don't worry, this isn't going to hurt the plant. They're succulents, they can take it. I'm actually going to just take and rip that bottom portion off. Now I don't recommend using a knife to kind of score the root system or anything. I just recommend just kind of loosening it with your hands. So we're just going to loosen it up. But just by taking that root system off the bottom, it's going to be completely fine. And I'll show you why here in a minute. So there we go. Got that kind of in the position I want. Got some trailers hanging over the sides. I absolutely love all that color. And I believe the tricolor sedum is an evergreen. I don't know if it'll tell me on the tag. Some of them I don't know all of them, but I think they are. evergreen, except in the coldest of climates. So, and this can take zones 4 to 9. So that means we're going to be completely fine and it'll be evergreen on our area. I'm going to try and use evergreens in this container so that they're always kind of there. All right, what's next? So let's see, I'm just going to make sure I got my soil kind of tucked up around the sides. And then I just got to pick my next plant. I don't think I'm going to do the larger Autumn Joy Sedum, Autumn Fire Sedum, because I think that's going to get a little bit too big. It's going to overpower this container. So I think I am going to go with that Agave. So I got this really cool Agave. I know you can't quite see it. This is going to be a little tricky to kind of get out of here. So I'm going to squeeze the sides. These are very, very little sharp little points here. So I'm just going to make sure I squeeze that nice and gentle. And then I'm just going to gently reach in and try and give this a little light tug on the top, which again I don't love to do. But I do really want this plant, so I got to get it out somehow. Without stabbing myself, I might have to put my gloves on. Yep. Give me 1 second. I'm going to grab my gloves. All right. Just to be safe, it's always nice to be a little bit safer than sorry. So we'll just put on some gardening gloves that'll protect my hands a little bit. And then that way I feel a little bit more comfortable kind of reaching in and tipping this thing upside down. There we go. Now this one's got a much bigger root system, so we're not going to try and not disturb this too much. So what you can see here is I've got all this root system down here. I've got a little excess soil on the top. I've got some moss growing up there, which I don't mind. I don't hate it, but I'm actually going to take a little bit of that off, because the moss has started to bloom, so you can actually see the little blooms on the moss there. So I'm actually going to just take that top layer of the soil off nice and gently. And this isn't going to hurt the agave at all. In fact, it might have been planted a little bit low, so this might actually be a good thing for it. But that just gets it back to that really cool look. Look at that guy. Really awesome. Now I can kind of get in here. I'm going to do that same thing here where I'm going to kind of slope my container a little bit. It's going to help for drainage. It's also going to encourage my pot to kind of grow in a different way. So I'm not going to plant this with a specific pattern really. I'm going to try and get this down into the lowest part of that container. And I am going to aim it a little bit so you can kind of see it, but also just because I think it'll look cool in this container to have it kind of aiming in a certain direction there. All right, so there we go. I'm going to keep my gloves on because now I've planted this sharp plant and I want to make sure I protect myself a little bit. Let's see, I also love these Hens and Chicks, so I got to pick a Hens and Chicks here to put in here. Hens and Chicks, of course, hence the name. The hen is the mother plant, and then it produces all these little babies, so this is a great example of that. You can see the little baby popping off here. Now you can take those, cut them off, stick them in some soil, and you got a new plant. You can let them grow naturally. That is perfectly fine. Eventually the hen will die, and what you'll do there is you'll just kind of take it out nice and gently, and then put a little, what I usually do is put a little bit of soil, maybe even some compost for my outdoor succulents, maybe a little bit of compost in that center, and then I can just take a chick and kind of cut it and plant it right back in there, and it'll root right back down and through. All right, so let's see. I'm going to plant, let's see, I love the dragon's blood. And here's one that got really nice and red. So we're definitely going to use that. And this is going to pair perfectly with the little tip of our agave. It's really that dark kind of purple color. So that's going to look really cool. And it's going to give me the ability to show you how you can actually separate some of these plants. So this one I can actually separate because I actually want some smaller pieces. So I'm actually going to take this plant, and I'm just going to gently kind of put my hands on each side and then just kind of work right through the plant, see if I can find a couple good plants in here. And you're just kind of looking at the inside trying to find and take some of this root system off the bottom. Just nice and gently. There we go. Work my thumb through. And what you're doing by working your thumb through the plant is you're able to kind of see where the separation is. And then you can just kind of gently get your two plants out. And see all that craziness? That's what I absolutely love, because I can work with that. I can use that all around this container. So I'm going to put my first one right here. I've got this little edge right here, and I really want to fill that in. So I'm going to just kind of lay this right in there. And then I've just got to work my root ball in. And again, for this webinar, we're kind of doing it on the little bit of the extreme measure. I might plant these a little bit further apart. Now let me just get a little bit of that soil that I knocked off and put it here in my little gap. And that'll allow also these longer kind of shoots to kind of root into the soil around it. So there we go. So now I've got this really cool looking red kind of color that's going to pull into that agave. And then of course, if you ever need to trim these, you can also trim them back. That's the nice thing about these perennial outdoor succulents, is you can trim them back if needed. So if they're starting to kind of grow a little wild on you, you can just give them a little bit of a trim. It'll tighten them up. They'll have new shoots that come out of them, and it'll do great after that. So there we go. Kind of, again, kind of manipulating our plants a little bit. I've got this other great chunk here that I'm going to use on the other side. Work this in. And that still gives me a good amount of space to kind of fill this in with some more. So this will look really, really cool. All right, because I want to get a Hens and Chicks in there. So which one do I want to use? That is the question. I don't want to go straight burgundy. And the reason I don't is because it's probably going to go right here. That's where I've got the biggest space for my Hens and Chicks to go. I'm going to work some of this soil around. I might actually have to take a little bit of it excess out. So I'm going to put a Hens and Chicks here. So if I went with a burgundy one, it's actually going to kind of wash out. It washes out with that dragon's blood sedum. So I want one that's got some burgundy in it, but pulls back that green color. I love this lime green one. It's got all these little dots in it. You can really probably see it when I pair it with this dragon's blood. Really nice looking. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Let's see what this one looks like. This one's cool too. This one might be a little bit more along the lines of what the agave looks like. So I might use that one. Yep, that's the winner. And so that's why I always take, like, whenever I'm planning out my plants, obviously didn't do a ton of planning for this one. Just grabbed a bunch of things. I knew I was going to have a ton of options. But also, when I'm here shopping around for my own personal containers at home, I will walk around and use the top of my cart just to kind of pair things together and kind of look at them and be able to pick out exactly what I want. So I'm just going to take off a little bit of that bottom of that root system there. All right, there we go. That fits in there pretty nicely. It's a little tall. I probably would prefer it just a little bit lower, but I think it's going to be fine. Oh, yep, there we go. It just settled in nicely. All right, perfect. All right, so now I've got this other little space. It's a tiny little space that I want to fill in. I definitely want to put something in there that's going to hang over the sides. We definitely need to eliminate some of the soil because we're pretty full over there now. Just push it over around my other plants. And this is going to look really cool when I finish it off. Now I could use rock there if I want to fill it with rock, but I think I might use this John Creech. I think that's what this one is. This is one of my favorite all-time sedums for outside. This is John Creech. Yep, sedum. Really cool looking one. Nice and flat and low. So this is going to crawl right through these spaces and kind of fill in some of these gaps. You can see that big gap right here. That's going to fill this in. Or the Hens and Chicks. The chicks will pop in there and fill it in. The nice thing about John Creech too is it can be separated, which is exactly what I need to do in this case. Again, I'm just gently taking some of this root system, working my thumb through. And sometimes what I like to do is just open it up. Look at that. That's exactly what I want. I'm not going to rip it all the way through. I'm not going to take it all the way off. I'm going to just kind of open it up so it's more linear. And then I can plant this right in here. I really don't need probably any of this soil because I got a nice, good, strong root system. So I just want to get it right in there. And there we go. Look at that. That finished that off nicely. We're just going to make sure we tuck in any of this remainder root system here right to the edge. And succulents love to be somewhat root bound. They don't need a whole lot of soil capacity. That's what's so cool about using these bowls is you don't need a whole ton of soil capacity. We just want to kind of fill it in. Now, you don't have to plant them this close at all. I'm doing a lot of this for the show of this presentation so that you can really see it, because there's nothing cooler than something looking like that. We got lots of different looks in there. It's not super symmetrical either. I try not to be as symmetrical as I can be. Of course, I could put the agave right in the center. I could do two of the same plants, keep it super, super symmetrical. But I like to throw in some different things in there. I like to push myself to try different things and try new arrangements and different looks. All right, so now I can take my gloves off, I think. And I think I'm going to try and use that sand. I don't know if I need... Yeah, let's do the sand. All right, so I'm going to try to just cut the corner on this thing so I can actually pour it in. Because pouring the sand is going to be so much easier. So all I'm going to do is just kind of go through one more time. Just make sure I'm nice and planted up. Everything's planted up. And I'm actually not going to need a ton of the sand because I don't have a lot of open space. But I am going to pull some of these plants back, hold them up. And then let's see if this sand will come out nice and gently. Oh yeah, perfect. And this is just going to help set those plants off so you can really see them really, really nicely. So this is where I might actually take a piece of paper if I'm at home or something. I don't think I have a piece of paper around me nearby right now, but where I might use actually a funnel to kind of funnel it down and get it right to the surface level. All right, I'm going to try and do this so you can kind of see me doing it without making a huge mess. And if you get a little bit on the top, that's not a problem. It's not going to hurt the plants at all. In fact, it kind of looks cool when it's kind of popping in and throughout the plant. We're just trying to cover up as much of the soil as I can just to finish it off. Again, kind of eliminates the chance of the succulents getting really, really kind of waterlogged if the soil happens to get too moist, because this container is going to be out in exposed elements. And so if we get days and days of rain, the good thing is it's going to drain well. I've got lots of root system. I don't have to worry about it getting too waterlogged. I don't think we're going to have any issues there. But this will keep the moisture from the soil off the leaves of the plants. And there we go. I think I pretty much got it. I might do a little bit more touch-up work, but that kind of finishes that up. And now I've got a little piece for my tabletop, for my outdoor patio set, and it'll look great, and people will really enjoy looking at this over time. So I'm just going to fill up a little bit more sand in here and just finish it off. And then this one will go out on the sales floor as well. And again, I love that habit, that look of it kind of coming up out of the bowl. You know, I can do this really flat, and that's perfectly fine, but I love having this little bit of this hill, and it really makes the plants kind of set up out of the bowl, which I think is very, very cool looking. And then all you got to do is just be a little bit more careful with your watering. And what I've also done is I've left a nice lip all the way around the edge so that my sand can collect down at the bottom. And that's fine. If it starts to kind of slip down a little bit over time, you just pull it back up. Eventually it'll settle in place and you'll be perfectly fine. So I just got a little bit of touch-up work to do on that one. And then I'll add a little bit of plant food right around. So I'll probably use my green leaf. So where's my green leaf go? So I got my green leaf right here. I'll add a little bit of that down to each plant. After I let it acclimate, you know, I've disturbed some of the root systems. I don't want to force it to grow right away. So eventually I'll come back probably in about a couple weeks and I'll put some green leaf in there, and then that way it's going to be fed for the next 2 to 3 months. So this is a great option for you. So Shirley said some of them look like they can be used as ground cover, right? Yep, for sure. I mean, that's one of my favorite uses for Sedum Angelina is as a ground cover. The John Creech is a very, very low ground cover. In fact, I think that might have come in our little, you can see this, Steppables tag. I don't know if you can see that with that glare. But this you can actually walk on. So Steppables is a moderate. You can walk on this, so you can grow this in between stepping stones or whatever you might want to use. It's an awesome, awesome succulent. So this one really turned out cool with the agave. and the Hens and Chicks, which is very similar. And we got that Dragon's Blood Succulent, that tricolor sedum. Really, really cool. So this one turned out well. And again, there's tons of different possibilities, tons of different options. You know, really, really cool looking succulents. There's a lot of options out there. You can mix them with some of your drought tolerant plants like a yucca. Love this color guard yucca. So if you want to do a big pot using that color guard yucca with like the Dragon's Blood sedum, or even some Hens and Chicks with that kind of really cool pink color, you can get that nice sharp contrast. And you can get lots and lots of different looks. Using an ice plant maybe is going to add some color to it as well. So really, really cool options. I encourage you, if you've never grown a succulent combination, to try one. They're a lot of fun. They're easy. They're low maintenance. We don't require a whole lot. They don't need to be watered too much. Great for areas that you might not get a ton of rain or areas that you might not be able to get access of water to very easily. So these are great options and a lot of fun, and you can always go back and change them very easily. And they're going to produce more. So I mean, like I got little babies coming off my hen here, so I've got the chicks that I can use. I can plug into some of the open spaces if I want to. I can start another container. So you got lots and lots of options. You can prune back the trailers if they start to get too long. They're really cool, a lot of fun to plant up, and a lot of fun to grow, and very easy. So I hope you all enjoy this. If you don't have any other questions, then we'll see you in a couple of weeks when we're getting ready for our pollinator week. It'll be a lot of fun. We hope you'll be able to visit us during that week-long event where we'll have lots of butterfly plants and different types of things that you can do to help our local pollinators. We'll see you then. I will be taking a short little break, a couple weeks, and then we'll be back with our pollinator webinar where I'll tell you all about all the different types of butterfly plants, bee plants, bee houses, butterfly houses, all the different things that you can do to encourage pollinators into our yard. So I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy the weather. It's supposed to be nice and cool. It's supposed to be a gorgeous weekend. We're going to get a little bit of rain. That's going to move through, which is great. Great for the garden. Get out there and enjoy your garden, and we'll see you soon. Have a great one. Thanks, Shirley. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Bye, everybody.